Go ahead and stock up on all of your Skull Island merch at Big Bad Toy Store at the link in the description down below. Kaiju, Dragon Ball, Pokemon, and more. It's Steven's Toy Reviews. Hello there, collectors. It is Steven here, and I'm finishing up the King Kong Skull Island D for Real figure reviews, or maybe for you, lucky viewer, who is watching this one, the first of the three, with a review of the Kong vs. Skullcrawler set. Now, this set is actually pretty cool. We had the standalone King Kong release and the standalone Skullcrawler release, and this one brings them together with some changes to the sculpt of both figures. This one comes at a retail price of about $115. We get two figures. Is it worth the price of one, or should you maybe just piecemeal it out and get the ones individually? What's changed? What's the same? Well, let's take a look to see whether or not this one is worth adding into your collection. Now, as I made mention in both of the other reviews, Star Ace has their name on the box. They were the ones who distributed this to market because they technically have the license. However, X Plus did the sculpting and they did the design for these guys. So who's the real person to get the most credit? Not quite sure on this one. But we do have an awesome display here of King Kong and the Skullcrawler going head to head in combat from a rather iconic scene in the movie. Yeah, this is definitely any kaiju fan's dream here, because this is not something we're going to get all the time in figure releases. An iconic movie scene in chibi format, you gotta love it. That being said, the previous two reviews, I highlighted two figures which have amazing sculpted details and some amazing paint applications to them as well. Here, it's pretty much more of the same, which is a good thing. The only sort of step back from the individual releases is that the back of the Skullcrawler doesn't seem to have as well detailed dry brushing on its back. Otherwise, Kong looks nearly identical to the standalone release, except for the arms that are used. The Skullcrawler has an extended tongue, and the rest of the paint details are great. Yeah. Overall, it's just kind of like meshing the two together. What I will say is a bit creepy, though, is that the Skullcrawler's new tongue, for whatever reason, lines up perfectly on King Kong's gum, and that is 950,000 different levels of not okay with me. Yeah, it doesn't look right. They should have done something different. So overall, for these two, if you saw the individual reviews of them, let me just go ahead and sum it up, because I could be here all day complimenting these. Skullcrawler has a fantastic range of dry brushing with different grays, greens, yellows, and browns. And Kong looks great as well, with some really well sculpted fur, fantastic application for eye decals, and he's in a nice battle pose, grabbing the Skullcrawler's jaw and getting ready to sock it to the Skullcrawler. Oh, there's one other very, very subtle change to the Skullcrawler that I didn't make mention of, because I'm kind of recording this in real time, and I almost completely forgot about it as I'm scrolling through the pictures here. The Skullcrawler's left hand is sculpted slightly differently. So even though it's a subtle change, it really shows how far they went to make sure you actually did buy a little bit of a different product. So now, like the standalone Skullcrawler release, you're going to have this big old hunk of vinyl up in the air, basically only supported by Kong's hand as he grabs the bottom portion of the jaw. That is definitely going to be cause of concern, because if this gets bumped one way, Skullcrawler is going to send the whole thing toppling over, and you're going to have broken vinyl, and no one wants that. So they included the generic Kong Skull Island base with one metal support arm that shoots up and supports the Skullcrawler on the back. So this way, you have a little bit of wiggle room in case there is a bump or an accidental shift some way, shape, or form, and you're going to be able to keep the whole display up and looking nice. So very thankful that they included that there. However, just like the other supports used for the other two figures, you don't need this. Now there's not really much else to say except for we're going to go ahead right on over to the size comparison so you can see how tall this set is. And it is actually taking up quite a bit of room. So do take note, you are probably going to have to clear at least 7 inches, preferably 8 just to be comfortable, to make sure this can fit on the shelf. And obviously because of that base, you're going to need a little bit of extra room going wide. And, of course, we got to compare it with the original 2 that are standalone releases, so that way you have an idea of how they'll all look together on the shelf. So, buy now, skip, or wait for a deal. Real quick before we close out the review, let's just do a quick recap of what has changed with the Kong vs. Skullcrawler set. First and foremost for Kong, the left arm, instead of sort of reeling back like he's getting ready to roar or he's in a battle pose, is instead gripping the Skullcrawler's lower portion of the jaw, and the right arm, instead of having the boat propeller, is almost like he's getting ready to sock it to the Skullcrawler, which is, pretty dang cool. For the Skullcrawler, we do have a changed up tongue, which is a little bit more extended, and the left arm, specifically at the hand, it's sculpted a little bit differently. Obviously, there is the change where the sort of tail portion of the Skullcrawler is wrapped around Kong's legs, but if you can't figure out that that's a change, well, I don't know. Overall, the Kong vs. Skullcrawler set, like I said, recreates a very iconic scene from the Kong Skull Island movie, and even if it's just a one-off purchase for a kaiju fan as a gift or for yourself, lots of folks will definitely appreciate this because this is not something we are going to get frequently in many formats, especially not really a chibi format. So, if you like King Kong even a little bit, or if you're a fan of the currently building MonsterVerse, I definitely would have to say this is one release you're gonna want to pick up. Now, what happens if you have the 2 standalone releases? Well, you can kind of make a mock version of this, but this is the real McCoy. Definitely worth the purchase. I got all 3. You can do it too. Well, collectors, that brings us to the end of the video today, and I just wanted to take a second to thank you so much for watching. Now, you've heard a lot from me. I'd like to hear a little bit from you. Drop in the comments down below whether or not you liked it, you hated it, or maybe you were somewhere in between. I also want to take an extra second here for a nice, humongous thank you to all the patrons for SDR over the last month who have really helped the channel grow into what it can be today. So to all of you, 2 big thumbs up. Thank you very much. And now the end card should be popping up, which will give you a few clickable links, like maybe to subscribe or head on over to my Patreon, or some short URLs like to my social media or to my Teespring store. There's also a video I hand-selected for you, so if you want to watch another STR video, I hand-selected some good content for you to watch, so definitely check out that video. Thank you again so much for watching, and I'll catch ya in the next video.